Well, welcome everybody to this hustings for Central and Southern Edinburgh. I'm sorry that we're starting a little bit late. We had some technical issues getting everybody gathered together, but we're good to go now. So it's my pleasure to welcome you here to this hustings organised by Gorgie and Merchiston Community Councils. As I say, it's a hustings that's going to cover the constituencies of both Edinburgh Central and Edinburgh Southern. I'm delighted that we're joined by candidates who are standing in one or other of those two constituencies from all the main parties. I'll get them to introduce themselves to you in a moment, and they'll have a minute to say a little bit about themselves. My name is John Conway. I'm the Provost of St Mary's Episcopal Cathedral in Edinburgh's West End, in the heart of Edinburgh Central constituency. Before that, I lived in Gorgie for 16 years, so I'm delighted to be chairing tonight's hustings. As I said at the start, we've invited a representative from each of the main parties standing. The Conservative and Unionist Party, the Green Party, the Labour and Cooperative Party, the Liberal Democrats and the Scottish National Party are all represented here tonight. The constraints of time mean that we couldn't invite all the candidates standing in each constituency, and so I'm asked to inform you that the following candidates are also standing in these two constituencies. In Edinburgh Southern, Philip Holden is standing for the Scottish Family Party. And in Edinburgh Central, Bonnie Prince Bob is running as an independent, Tam Lard is standing for the Scottish Libertarian Party, and Donald Mackay is running for the United Kingdom Independence Party. Before I hand over to each of the candidates in turn, I'll just say a little bit about the format of tonight. We are anticipating having time for 8 rounds of questions. Each of the candidates will be given a minute to answer each question. We'll vary the order in which they answer that question, and at the end they'll be given another maybe 90 seconds to sum up and add anything they feel hasn't been covered. We've been asking local people to send in the questions that they want asked beforehand, and so we've already chosen some of those. The candidates have not been forewarned of the questions, although they might guess that some of them are coming up, but there is still time for you to ask a question. Please do submit any question that you'd like in the chat facility on Teams, and if it meets our criteria of being a fair question and there's time to ask it, then we'll try and put it to the candidates. We can't promise, but do use that chat facility and we'll do our best. So without further ado, to the candidates on the screen with me tonight, I'm just going to ask them very briefly to introduce themselves. First, to the SNP candidate in Edinburgh Central, Angus Robertson.
Hello, very good evening to the audience and to all the fellow panelists. For those who don't know me, my name is Angus Robertson. I'm the SNP candidate in Edinburgh Central. Been involved in politics for quite some time. I was an MP at Westminster for 16 years, was the Westminster leader of the SNP for a decade, and have served as the deputy leader of the SNP for 3 years under Nicola Sturgeon. I am from Edinburgh Central. I grew up in Stockbridge. I went to Flora Stevenson's Primary and Broughton High School. Until last year, I lived in Harrison Road, slap bang in the middle of the areas of responsibility of both of the organisations hosting this evening's hustings. So I know the lie of the land well. We're about to get on to policies in a moment, but I would just like to leave you with one thought about my commitment. I'm sure the other panelists have theirs, which is I have done this long enough to know that it's really important for a parliamentarian to work hard for all of their constituents, regardless of who they vote for, which is why absolutely top of my priority list, should I be elected, is that I will be holding regular public surgeries, and I will be available for the likes of community councils to work in partnership. I know that hasn't been the case in Edinburgh Central in this last parliamentary term, and should I be elected, I will be there from the start to work with both the community councils and people in the local area with regular public surgeries.
Thank you, Angus. Next, Miles Briggs, the Conservative candidate for Edinburgh Southern.
Thank you, John. Thanks very much, and good evening to everyone who's joined us this evening for this hustings. I'm Miles Briggs. I'm the Conservative candidate for Edinburgh Southern. I'm also the lead candidate for the Conservatives in the Lothian region. It's been an honour to serve you in the Scottish Parliament over the last 5 years as a Lothian regional MSP, and I hope in that time I've shown that I'm a campaigning MSP who's available for when people need me for help, support and advice. Over the last 5 years, I've been campaigning mostly on health issues here in the capital, including most recently the fight to make sure that we get a replacement eye pavilion. I also took forward a private member's bill in this Parliament to extend free personal care for those under the age of 65. Above all, our Lothian team and both constituency and regional MSPs need to work together to do what we can for Edinburgh and to progress the issues that are facing the capital. And I hope anyone who is elected on this call will be doing just that. So look forward to your questions, and thanks very much for including me this evening.
Thank you very much, Miles. Next, we have Alison Johnston, who is the Green candidate for Edinburgh Central. Alison.
Apologies, unmute. Yeah, I'm Alison Johnston. I'm the Scottish Green Party candidate for Edinburgh Central, and I'm also the lead candidate on the Scottish Green Party list for Lothian Region. I've had the pleasure and privilege of representing Lothian Region in Parliament since 2011, and prior to that was a Green councillor for Meadows and Morningside ward on the City of Edinburgh Council. I have spent my entire life in this incredible city. Yet I still don't take it for granted. It is a beautiful place to live, but it is still a very unequal city. We have areas of great affluence sitting cheek by jowl with areas that continue to be blighted by poverty. I grew up in a housing estate in peripheral West Edinburgh, and the challenges remain, but they aren't inevitable. And they're not intractable, and where there's a political will, we can change. And I think as we move forward from the pandemic, I'm absolutely committed to ensuring that we have a green and fair recovery where everyone benefits, because we saw during the pandemic that it's not beyond us to ensure that everyone has a roof over their head. And we came together as a society to make sure that no one went hungry, that prescriptions were delivered, that children at school that perhaps didn't, those being schooled at home who didn't have access to Chromebooks and so on, that those were delivered. So we've seen some great societal pooling together, and I very much would like that to be our focus as we move forward. We need to make sure that those living in Edinburgh Central and Lothian Region and beyond have access to meaningful work, to a well-funded health service, to a better national care service, and I really look forward to this evening's discussion. Thank you.
Thank you, Alison. Next, over to Fred McIntosh, who is the Liberal Democrat candidate for Edinburgh Southern.
My name's Fred McIntosh. As described, I am the candidate in Southern. I'm also second place on our Lothian list, and I look forward to your questions. In real life, I'm an advocate. I'm a human rights lawyer, and many years ago, I was a city councillor here in Edinburgh. I got involved in politics once again in response to the Brexit vote, and I'm running for election to this Parliament because I believe there's much we can do to sort out the state of our country with the powers that Parliament already has. And if we think about the year we've had and the effect of the pandemic on all of us, we need a Parliament full of MSPs who'll put every ounce of their being into the recovery, and particularly ensuring that our school system, the mental health services in our NHS and our economy is firing on all cylinders using the powers the Parliament already has. You can elect a Liberal Democrat MSP on the regional list. If we achieve anything like the vote we did in either election in 2019, Lothian would elect a extra Liberal Democrat MSP, and that indeed would be me. And I would work for the whole region. I think it's important that we work as for our areas and our communities, because sometimes in politics it feels that everything is decided by the government, and actually it's important to have local representatives working together across the different parliaments and councils to deliver things for our communities. I look forward to your questions.
Thank you very much, Fred. And lastly, we were due to have Maddie Kirkman, the Labour candidate for Edinburgh Central. Unfortunately, Maddie is indisposed, but we're delighted that Daniel Johnson has stepped in at the last moment. Daniel is the Labour candidate for Edinburgh Southern. Daniel.
Well, thank you very much. So for the last 5 years, it has genuinely been the honour of my life to represent Edinburgh Southern in the Scottish Parliament. It's the place where I live, the place where I'm bringing up my daughters, and very close to where I grew up. And I also have connections to Edinburgh Central, having run a business in the West End of Edinburgh. So these are two parts of Edinburgh which are hugely important to me. But I think most of all, I'd just like to say thank you to the organisations that have come together to make this event possible, because this is a strange election. You know, we are not able to see one another very much. And for me, elections are all about discussion and dialogue, being able to speak to people, whether it's on the doorstep or at hustings. And we've been able to do far too little of that. And so it's great to be able to do this in some small way this evening, because above all else, what democracy is about for me is that local discussion and making sure that local voices are heard in Parliament. That's what I've sought to do over the last 5 years, and what I'll continue to do if re-elected in just over a week's time.
Thank you very much, Daniel.